Let's move on to Russia. Wow. This one, Trump thought he was going to get into office and he thought he was immediately going to end this war. And Putin
Yeah.
basically said, no, I have other
Mm,
plans. Sorry, but you're not as powerful as you think you are. I mean, that's seems to be the signaling from Russia is you're not as
yeah.
powerful and influential as you think you are. And so, no, you cannot just take the stage and suddenly end a war that doesn't actually technically involve you. I mean, it does obviously, but right.
Yeah.
So, what do you make of Putin, the strategy, what the U.S. is doing by continuing to fund Ukraine? Where are we going with this one? Do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as Trump's mistake here, I mean, this is Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy, had said that, look, no, you're right that Trump doesn't know anything about anything, but he is the kind of guy who can learn anything in 10 minutes. If you just
Yeah.
explain it to him, this is the deal. And the thing is like, there's another way of saying that he can learn anything that you can explain in 10 minutes, right? But still left wide open is anything that you'd have to read a few books for, or you know what I mean, or have to like really carry an interest and read day to day to day. I mean, I don't think any of these presidents, maybe Obama, but I don't think that Trump or W. Bush like just even read the newspaper every morning. You know what I mean? The Wall Street Journal or the Times, or much less like a whole mess of them. That's what aides are for, to tell them stuff. But they're not the kind of people who just read and read and read because they really want to know. And especially not this guy. So think about how complicated the situation is in Ukraine and all of the bloody history there and all the weird borders and where they were drawn in this funny little peninsula with a military base on it and all of this stuff that he doesn't know. And so, oh, that thing? Well, I don't like it and I'm the heavy and I'm going to throw my weight around and they're going to listen to me and they're going to stop the fighting. But that's just because he doesn't understand what's at stake. Or maybe like on the more minimal level, he knew that, well, I'll just promise not to bring Ukraine into NATO. But the thing is, that's too little too late now. And especially after September of 2022, when Ukraine made their biggest success and took all of Kharkiv back and a little bit of Luhansk, as well as took about half of Kherson and forced the Russians back to the other side of the river down in Kherson. And in reaction to that, Putin angrily annexed two more oblasts, right? Zaporozhye and Kherson, and all the territory from the far east all the way to in the south there on the southern coast, all the way to Crimea. And yet, even at this state, as we're recording this in late July of 25, they have not taken all that territory yet. They still don't even control all of Donetsk, although they're definitely making rapid progress there. They do control virtually all of Luhansk and parts of Kharkiv and Sumy, but smaller parts. But they still have a massive amount of territory left in Zaporozhye and Kherson to take before they can call them their own, especially in Kherson. That includes the other side of the river. They can't go there until Ukraine is defeated and their
Mhm.
army is broken, and Russia can then go wherever they want and can just sail right across and face no opposition. Otherwise, that's a hell of a slog, as the Ukrainians have found out, trying to cross the river the other way. In their horrific, just self-sacrificial marine offensive down there at the southern part of the Dnieper River, trying to take back Kherson. It's just, they're just drowned and exploded to death down there. It's just horrible. So, in other words, Trump's just trying to call time out right in the middle of a heated quarter, and nobody's stopping. Oh, by the way, on the other side, the Ukrainians don't want to quit either. I mean, the Ukrainian state does not want to quit, and their army is still able to field men. And as I say, if Russia doesn't control all of Zaporozhye and Kherson, what does that mean? And
Mhm.
Donetsk, that means Ukrainian forces still do. And so now Putin goes, oh, you want to cease fire? That's fine. Yeah, we could end the war right now. But you guys are going to have to turn around and walk away and give this territory up voluntarily at this point, territory where you're still standing. They're not going to give into that. That would mean that all the heroes who died so far died in vain. So we can never give in. Sunk cost fallacy to the bitter end. So the Ukrainians don't want to quit either. So Trump is just, shouting time out at guys in the middle of a brawl, right? Like, they're not stopping. And as he put it, well, sometimes you just got to let them fight. What the hell? I don't know. I tried to make them stop and they wouldn't. It's like, yeah. I mean, that's that's the situation, and it's Putin's fault, but it's especially Joe Biden's fault. It's the empire's fault for putting Ukraine in this position and forcing this situation. And the Russians are no angels. I mean, it was just, I'm sorry, there's a lot to it, but especially it was Barack Obama and Joe Biden who gave the Russians cause to change the status quo there, especially to this insane degree. And there's no getting them to take that decision back at this point, right? It's
Mhm.
just they're that far gone. And so,
Well,
it's funny because
go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, 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 go ahead.
Well, help me understand why Ukraine is fighting so hard. I guess, and the reason why I don't understand it is because they're a new country. I mean, in my lifetime, they've not been their own nation. I mean, in my lifetime, they've been part of the USSR, essentially Russia. And
Mhm.
every Ukrainian I know, I have Ukrainian family members who came over from Ukraine when it was the USSR. They married into the family, and I have friends who, one of my closest friends came over from Kiev when she was young, and they consider themselves Russians. I mean, yes, they're from Ukraine, but if you ask what are, oh, what are you? When I first met them, so they say Russian,
Mhm.
we're Russian. And my family members that came from Ukraine, they would describe themselves as Russian. They said, I mean, as I was growing up playing with my new cousins that came over and married into the family, they didn't speak the same language really, but they could at least say they were Russian. So, I mean, that's why are they fighting so hard? It just seems like, okay, go back and be Russia, I guess. I mean, rather than kill off all your people. I know that
Mhm.
sounds, people might say, but Kim, you're not telling the Palestinians to do that. Completely different situation here. I mean, this is a group
Yeah.
of people that have really only had independence in 30 something years, if that. A lot of them don't even consider themselves, I mean, they don't have seemingly Ukrainian pride, right? They're still calling themselves Russians. So I just don't understand why they're fighting so hard.
Mhm. I think in many cases, people identify with their city. They're Muscovites or they're Kievians or they're from Odessa or whatever and kind of identify more like that, like your sports team rather than your nation
Sure.
state. And the thing is it's a sliding scale. Like if you look at the election results, in color code on the map, you can see it's a sliding scale from deep blue in the far west to deep red in the far east or vice versa.
Yeah.
And so you do have there is an entirely separate ethnic Ukrainian identity that's outside of what you're talking about. You're talking about everybody like from Odessa and east of there. And but people in the west of the country, especially in Galicia and Volhynia, these areas used to be owned by Poland, and before that, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And they're what used to be called ethnic Ruthenians, and they have their own culture, and it's extremely nationalistic and chauvinistic, and it's a huge part of the Civil War is them trying to force their way and their idea of Ukraine and their national heroes, who are a bunch of Hitler serving Nazis, and set that to be the standard for the whole country, and at the expense of the ethnic and culturally Russian people in the East. And then
Which is
the
what
further
Zelensky
east
is.
you
I
go,
mean, but
sure.
Zelensky's not one of those from the West. I mean, his primary
Right,
language
he's
is
from
Russian.
Kharkiv. Right,
Yeah.
and he's Jewish, so he's not ethnically in either camp. He could be like a third way guy, or that's a bad use of that term. He could be a third choice, and he
Mhm.
ran on that. He ran as, "Look, man, I get along with everybody, and I'm from the East, but not that far east, and I'm Jewish and not ethnically Russian, so hopefully acceptable to more people in the West, and promising peace and compromise." That was what he ran on. And then very
Mhm.
quickly, the Americans and the Nazis let him know that he would not be allowed to seek compromise. And I tell that story in the book. That is what he ran on in the first place. But there are ethnic, some of the very right wing nationalists. I believe Andrei Beletsky, who's one of the most important Nazis in the country now, leads what's now called the Third Army Corps, which used to be the
Mhm.
Azov Battalion. I believe it was him or possibly Dmitry Yarosh, but I believe it was Biletsky who even said at one point, we should just let them go. We hate them. They hate us. We can't really dominate them. So, like, why not just cut them loose? But that's a marginal opinion. That's all the way to the right, that fed up. But anybody, between the center and the right, they're not going for that. They want that
Mhm.
territory back. And you know, I mean, these people are, especially like when you talk about the ethnic nationalists, they're like romantics. You know what I mean? They're almost like the Bin Ladenites or whatever, where they're just all caught up in their beliefs and their sort of like poetic vision of the greatness of this future that they aspire to. It ain't rational, right?
Mhm.
It's crazy. It's like all the way, and I quote them at length in the book. Like, I don't like to go around calling people Nazis who aren't Nazis. These guys are Nazis. You
Mhm.
ask them and they go, "Well, I'm a National Socialist." Yeah, well, okay, that's why we call you that. I mean, that's what it is. And so they are, and in that mold, that kind of exclusivist, collectivist, um, permanent warrior, racial supremacist, glory to the heroes, and let's build a Ukrainian empire. Like, they're nuts, dude. They want to take over Russia and the Middle East and whatever. Like, they go on and on with this stuff. They're like neocons, right? That's not a perfect one. They serve neocons, but they are irrational in their romanticism, right? Like a bunch of soldiers marching off to fight in the Civil War or whatever. This isn't what you thought it was going to be. It doesn't represent what you think it represents. And so, I mean, what have they done? They've committed suicide. And quite frankly, like going back to 2014, they could have sought compromise from the very beginning. I mean, the goddamn Washington Post of all people, they celebrated the revolution, of course. But as soon as the revolution was over and Yanukovych was run out of town, they said, now listen, you need to bring pro-Russian people from the East into the government, and you need
Mhm.
to announce amnesty for at least most of the people involved in the previous regime, and you need to not declare a culture war against the Russians in the East, and you need to let them know explicitly that they're still your brothers and this is still a democratic society, despite the fact that there's a change of government 10 months short of the next election and all of these things. And they did not do that. Instead,
Mhm.
they went to war. They said, you will submit to our rule or else. And they lost the territory then. They said they did, half their military split to the other side. I don't know half, but maybe more than half. I don't know, but a huge proportion of their military went to the other side. And it was just essentially a ceasefire. There was no fighting going on. Protesters had seized buildings in the East. The military, they didn't want to fight themselves. The whole thing had frozen.
Mhm.
And then they sent the Nazis to the front to start murdering people. And they just wouldn't take compromise for an answer. No way. They had to win, but they haven't won a damn thing. They've
Yeah.
done nothing but lose territory and lose territory. As we've talked about on the show before, when this thing is over, the whatever ethnic Ukrainians in the western part of the country and the ruling elite there, they will be lucky if they get to keep Kharkiv and Sumy and Odessa and even the entire southern coast. As I know you know, but your audience may not be aware, it's somewhat an obscure fact that there's this little strip of Russian-controlled land called the Transdniester or Transnistria that's on the Moldovan side of the river on the Ukrainian-Moldovan border. So if you're the Russians and you're driving across the southern coast of Ukraine, which at some point they're going to win outright, they're going to have their way. Why not keep going? You got Crimea, Odessa's right there, the jewel of the Black Sea. Not only can
Yeah.
you take it back, quote unquote back, because it was a Russian founded city back centuries ago. So not only can they retake Odessa from their point of view, not take it away from Ukraine, but liberate it and retake it. But now Transnistria is just another hop, skip, and a jump from there. So you might as well close the entire southern Ukrainian coast and take Transnistria. The Ukrainian right, the radical right who's refused to compromise this entire time, who refused to let Zelensky compromise when he did want to back in 2019 and 2020, they are the ones who have dug the grave for the Ukrainian state. This is what they got. And it's really sad. And by the way, because I saw someone say, you brought up the Israel-Palestine analogy. So I saw someone say this to me. Oh, Horton says that Ukraine just has to submit to Russian rule because that's their sphere of influence. Well, tell that to the Palestinians that they just have to submit to Israel. But I never said that Russia was justified in invading this country. And I never said that the Ukrainians should just have to live with a Russian invasion and occupation. That sucks. If they want to fight about it, that's fine, but that's their business. Sorry, our country got you into that mess. But
Mhm.
what I was saying was that they didn't really have the right, or at least in practice, it was just completely stupid for them for their regime to seek to join America's military alliance in Eastern Europe.
Right.
It was a bridge too far. They all knew it. It was completely unpopular. It was very divided opinion in the country, majority opposed for decades. It had been in the Constitution and in their law forever. They want, even as I quote in the book, even Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski said, we need to treat Ukraine as a bridge between East and West, respect their neutrality, treat them like Austria and Finland in the Cold War, and not try to take them away. That way we don't have to have a war over it.
Right.
Not just John Mearsheimer, the
Right.
wise Mearsheimer, but even Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski, who led the parade to expand NATO as far as they did. They said, even, you know what, there's
Right.
reasonable gentlemen must realize that there's a line you just can't cross here, or you're going to get your friends into a fight that they can't win. And so that was all I was saying about Ukraine and their situation. They're a weak country next to a powerful country. Don't threaten that powerful country's security.
Well, there's also a big difference in that Russia views Ukraine as a little brother. Hey guys, thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you could check out Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.